Welcome to the Retreat Leaders Podcast, your sanctuary with retreat experts, where we spill the tea on retreat success. Here we dive into crafting transformational guest experiences, talk about how to avoid pitfalls, and unlock marketing secrets. Whether you're a seasoned guru or a budding enthusiast, we've got the inside scoop for you. Join us as we learn how to flourish in this magical world of retreats. Hey guys, welcome to the Retreat Leaders Podcast. I am uber excited about my guest today because we're going to talk about something that's so important and often overlooked until sometimes it's too late or the last minute, and all of those things are not right. And I want to make sure you are protected right from the front. So Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Will you tell everyone who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Sarah Waldbuesser. I am a trademark attorney and owner of two businesses. One is called Destination Legal, where we have a contract shop for coaches and online business owners, as well as retreat hosts. And I have a law firm called Twist Law, where I work individually with clients, helping them secure their brands with trademarks.
All of those things that are really important and a lot of business owners, especially solopreneurs, are not thinking about. So
Very true.
yeah, you and I have had a little bit of conversation, plus one of our mutual friends, Aaron, and we know the importance of this being protected legally. But can you tell us, just give us an idea of one, why it's important, and two, what can happen if you're not protected?
Yeah, absolutely. So any business, anyone that is selling a service or a product opens themselves up to liability. So the biggest concern I know a lot of business owners have is, am I going to get sued? Things like that. And so having legal in place is really important for any business owner, but it is especially important for retreat hosts because you guys are hosting live events. And when you are in person, the chance of something happening and there being a liability goes through the roof, right? We're chatting on Zoom, we're pretty safe in our homes. And so a lot of coaches or other online business owners, there's certainly concerns and we need to have proper disclaimers and contracts in place. But once you're in person, whether you are in Florida or Costa Rica or Italy, your liability, just exponentially increases. So it's really important for retreat hosts to have these contracts in place. And, with legal, it's not a matter of if, it's when. And so in terms of things to be concerned about as a retreat host, I see really two. One is the risk of something happening in person. So whether it's, someone falls while hiking and breaks their ankle, or someone, has an allergic reaction that you didn't know about, or someone, God forbid, has a heart attack or some emergency medical event, or someone gets in a car accident and you paid for the bus or the Uber or the driver. And so any of those can result in increasing liability. And the other big issue that I know retreat hosts run into, and where a contract really helps, is with cancellations and making sure that someone isn't reaching out the day before your retreat and asking for a refund. That's not very fun. So making sure, I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit more, but just that you have a solid cancellation policy or refund policy or no refund policy, right? There's different ways to go about this. It's just making sure that it's really clear to your clients.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, because sometimes people are like, okay, I get the waiver part. We don't want anybody to physically get hurt or even emotionally. There's all different things that can occur, right, in these in-person experiences. But one thing that's super important as well is the cancellation policy. I've been doing this for 15 years, and I can tell you that is probably the number one pain in the ass, if I'm just going to say it. That is literally the thing. And if you're not clear about it, if it's at all, ambiguous, you're giving refunds all the way till, truth be told, if you really don't do it right, you could refund them even if they attended your retreat.
Yeah. COVID really changed this because so many retreat hosts lost so much money when COVID hit because they didn't have contracts in place, that they knew immediately when things, kind of went back to normal, that they needed to have assurances and clauses regarding that. And, because retreats are booked out so far in advance, life happens. There's going to be, illnesses and pregnancies and deaths in the family, and, things happen. And so really just making sure that you're clear about how you'll resolve is super important. And one thing to keep in mind that's amazing about contracts is they're your safety net, they're your starting point. So you as the retreat host get to decide whether to enforce the contract or not. If you have a client, a beloved client reaching out 3 weeks before with a horrible sob story, and you want to give her a different type of refund, or you want her to be able to come on your next retreat, that's totally up to you. But your contract allows you to have that fallback for all of the other instances.
Yes, 100%. I've definitely had to do that myself. I offer for my contract and my cancellation policy is there's no refunds. It's
Hmm.
just there's just absolutely no refunds because usually when someone wants a refund, it's at a point where I cannot replace that spot. Typically, I mean, if someone's asking for a refund 3 or 4 months in advance, that's something that we can look at as far as like if your spot's filled, I'm happy to give you a refund. But when you're telling me the day before,
Yeah, yeah.
that's
And I've seen a lot of retreat hosts use kind of a sliding scale. So if it's 6 months or more, you might get 70% back. If it's 4 months or more, you might get 40% back. And if it's, 3 months or less, then, you're not getting anything back. And again, it's up to you as the host to decide what you want. You just want to be as clear as possible.
agreed. Yeah. So our policy is there's no refunds. We require that you purchase trip insurance that covers the cost of your retreat, and that is their insurance policy as far as we are concerned. The only
Hmm.
exception that I have made is if there is something really, really severe, and that's case by case. But even then, it's like, well, you were required to purchase insurance, which would take care of this situation.
Absolutely. And it's really important for the retreat host, and this because you have a lot of upfront costs, right? And so you can't be giving refunds left and right. It's just not any way to run a business like this.
Hey guys, it's Shannon. If you've been dreaming about hosting retreats or taking your existing retreats to the next level, let's make it happen together. Join me August 22nd through 24th for an unforgettable retreat leader mastermind experience. It's going to be located on my ranch in the beautiful Texas Hill Country. Here's what you'll get when you hang out with me and an amazing group of like-minded leaders. Learn my top strategies for marketing, business operations, and selling out your retreats. Connect with other passionate retreat leaders in a high vibe, supportive circle. Recharge, relax, refresh, and soak up all the inspiration our ranch and our staff have to offer because you deserve it. This isn't just another workshop, it's a chance to step fully into your role as a heart centered leader while building a business that thrives. I'll be right there with you, sharing everything I've learned from the years of hosting retreats and running my own venue. Spots are super limited, so grab yours now at profitwithpurposemastermind.com. Let's create retreats that transform lives, starting with yours. That's profitwithpurposemastermind.com. I can't wait to see you there. Yeah, and it's funny because any other business, this wouldn't even be a discussion, but for some reason in particularly the wellness world, it's like, oh my goodness. It's like, no, it's not oh my goodness. It's a business transaction too. I know there's an energetic exchange, there's transformation, there's healing, but at the end of the day, if you are not looking at this like a business, then you probably shouldn't be in the business. And I hate to sound so harsh, but that's just the way it is.
It's very true. And I've worked with a lot of people in the health and wellness space. And I know that everyone wants to think that their clients are always the best and they're never going to have an issue. And 99% of the time, they're usually right. But I promise you, there is the 1%. You're going to run into a client that is a problem. And that's where your legal toolbox can really help.
Agreed. I have so far had one situation where we had a very, very difficult guest who we actually had to remove from the property. And I'm really grateful we had a physical copy of her signed agreement because she did request that and, thought that she would go down a different path and it did not work out well for her either way. But so I can attest to the fact that there are times where, and when the guest first showed up, it was like, this guest is lovely and everything's great. And within 24 hours, I don't know what switch flipped, but it flipped, became dangerous for my staff and for the other guests. And so I was never so glad in my entire life that I had those legal documents.
Absolutely. Those unforeseen circumstances. We talk about the physical injury, but there is other things too. Like, what if you have a guest who does go a little crazy and decides, well, everyone's at lunch, to go ransack everyone's room and steal their laptops and they're gone, right? Like, you as the retreat host really want to make sure that you aren't liable for any of these types of incidences. And very smart of you to bring printed copies on your retreats. That I'm going to start telling people to do that.
Yeah, we do. You when you sign up online, you are clicking that you agree to it and that you will sign a physical copy when you arrive. I did that just because there are some programs, as you know, that you can use online that does capture a true digital certificate and true digital signature. But truth be told, my insurance is the one that really requires me to keep them in person, handwritten, not handwritten, but hand signed, and we have to keep them
Hmm.
for shit, to be honest with you, I think it's 3 years,
Hmm.
something like that. And so that's the reason why we do it. It's insurance, and you know what? It's extra coverage. There could be no mistake that we have actual physical signed copy of it. So nothing that's going to disappear in techno world.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so yes, I just, there's so many different things. And one thing I think, Sarah, that a lot of people don't realize, and this is something that I teach in my courses and in my membership, when you're doing an online registration, and Sarah, tell me if I'm wrong, but this is what I was taught, and you don't capture these agreements at the time that you are capturing their money, they can at any point say, it wasn't a legal binding agreement. I didn't know all of these things before I gave you my money, so I want my money back. Do you know what I'm saying? I say this because a law firm that I used to work with told me about some incidences that happen this way, where it's kind of like the way you picture it. It's like you purchase a house, once it's closed and settled and you own the house, then they hand you the HOA and POA
Hmm.
agreements. You can't do that. Like, that's not how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to, especially if you're doing like a check the box type situation, it needs to be at the point of purchase. And they need to be able to actually click and see those terms that they're agreeing to at the point of purchase. And if you meet those requirements, courts have held that that is just as legally binding as a signature.
Yes, that's exactly what I mean. And this is important because as more and more of these third-party booking sites come on board and people are advertising their retreats on these third-party sites, and these third-party sites are requiring the registration to occur on their platform first before it gets sent on. And I'm cautioning everyone that, listen, if that third-party site is collecting that person's money and information and then in turn gives it to you, but there was no agreement to any cancellation policy of yours or waiver of yours, it can actually be contested later on. And so you got to work that out ahead of time. And so
Yeah.
I want to make sure people are aware of that as they are
Yeah.
working with these third-party sites.
Yeah.
But okay, so we know that that's super, super important. We know that you have to legally protect yourself and what can happen if you don't. And honestly, this sounds terrible, but the sky's the limit on what could happen if you don't. Because there are as many people in the world as there are as many interesting things that can occur or be said to have occurred.
Absolutely, absolutely. An interesting one that I have heard is someone was on a retreat and did have like a medical emergency and needed treatment, and they had like passed out. So the retreatos had to make the decision to call an ambulance and get them to the hospital. And then that person later came back and sued because to pay for it because they didn't consent to it. So all of our retreat, contracts now say that if there's a medical emergency, you're consenting to allow us to help you find treatment.
Hey, it's Shannon here. I'm just popping in really quickly to ask a big favor. Would you pause the show and go review it for us? Please. Reviews really help us to be able to get more guests and more experts on the show to help you transform your retreats. So if you wouldn't mind pausing and leaving us a review, that would mean everything. And if you're not already subscribed, do that too.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's like,
And
really? Anyway,
yeah.
we could go down that crazy path for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
So, okay, talk to us about what you offer and what your firm offers for retreat leaders specifically, that I know for a fact is amazing because I have already had retreat hosts use your services.
Amazing. Yeah. So, well, we have a very, very thorough retreat contract for retreat host. And, I want people to really think of legal is not something to be scared of or intimidated by. I take pride in making legal easy. And these are downloadable, do it yourself. You could have this filled out in 20 or 25 minutes. It's not only for your protection as the retreat host, it also is really helpful in creating boundaries and expectations for those that are coming on your retreats, because it outlines exactly what's included down to how many meals and how many nights, and these activities are included and these aren't, so that they really understand coming into it what's going to be included and what's not, and they have it in writing. So it's really a helpful tool, not just for you, but for them as well. And of course, the main aspect is just protecting the retreat host from liability. So that's one of the main ones. We also have a vendor contract, because I know from talking to Aaron and others that often in retreat hosts are working on the ground with, whether it's chefs or photographers or yoga teachers or venues that might not be using contracts. And so this is a vendor contract that you can provide to them, because anytime you're paying someone or being paid, you want to have a contract in place, you want to have it in writing. And so that is something that was just released last year after we got so many requests for it. So those are the two main in terms of contracts. If you are a business owner and a retreat host with a website, you want to make sure to have website protections as well. And so that's a privacy policy, which is legally required, just goes in the footer on every page of your website and any landing pages where you are collecting emails, and then website terms of service. And so we actually have a full bundle that includes everything I just talked about in terms of a template. The other big thing for a retreat host to think about is protecting their brand. And so you do that through a registered trademark. And so trademarks protect business names, retreat names, services, programs, products, allowing you to own the name so that nobody else within the industry can use it. And I know from my own experience in the online business and being a fan of retreats, there are only so many names, right? And so if you have one that you love, I urge you to get going on the process and not wait, because if somebody else trademarks it before you, then you run the risk of having to rebrand, and I know that's no fun. So as a trademark attorney, I do most of my time helping owners protect their brand. It's getting a trademark is a long process. It can take up to a year, but the date of filing starts your legal protection. So if you file today and I file tomorrow, the trademark office won't even look at mine until yours is processed. So there is some assurances there. And, I get the question all the time of, well, how do I know if it's time to trademark? Should I do it? Should I not? Because it is, it is an investment. It is time. And I like to use something called the gut punch test. So if you're thinking about your signature retreat name or your business name, and pretend that tomorrow in your inbox, you got a cease and desist letter saying that you had to rebrand in the next 10 days. How do you feel? If you got a gut punch, it's time to trademark and we should talk.
That's a really good way of looking at it. And I highly encourage that. I trademarked my ranch name, and I'm in the process actually of trademarking my signature retreat name. But I love how literally that whole gut punch thing, that's exactly what it is. It's like, if you're like, I don't care, I'll just change the name. Okay, I guess. Then that's, you're not in that place to do it. But
Absolutely. Trademarking really is more emotional than logical, because we get so attached to our names. Like my first trademark was protect your passion, even before my business name, because I really loved it and I wanted to use it. And I would have been really upset if someone had taken it. So that's exactly right. If you get the gut punch, it's time. If you're like, I don't mind a rebrand, then it's not.
love that so much. So that's another service that you offer. Question on the vendor contracts, because listen, I honestly hadn't done that for probably the first 2 or 3 years of hosting retreats. Big time no, you guys. You might think, oh, it's an agreement. We've got it in email. We've talked about it or whatever. Absolutely not. These things are such a lifesaver. Not only is it protection legally, but really it's a good communication tool that you can go back to and said, hey, we agreed you would do this and I would do this, or you would provide this service. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a crystal clear communication tool so that there is no doubt or ambiguity. Oh, I cannot say that word today. There's no doubt about what's going on between the two of you when you have a vendor agreement.
Yeah, absolutely. Because just like your guests, like things can come up for them too. What if your chef gets COVID a day before, right? Like what in that instance, what is going to happen? And what if your photographer can't make, these things come up for all sides.
Yes, agreed. But my question now is, so does this vendor agreement work when you've got two hosts who are co-facilitating, or would you recommend that being a whole separate contract?
Yeah, so if you're co-facilitating, you really want a partnership agreement in place, and that is different than a vendor contract. You could potentially get away with it with the help of an attorney because it would take some updating, but really that you're talking about a partnership there because when you're co-hosting, you have things to think about, where's the money going, who has access to the bank accounts, who's doing what. And so I know, if this is a longer term relationship, co-hosts will often start a new LLC or a whole new company to manage their retreat. So I would say the vendor contract should be used for independent contractors, people you're paying in that way, and if you're co-hosting, you really want a partnership agreement in place.
Perfect. That's what I thought, but I just wanted to clarify that because in my membership, I've got some hosts who are in partnership with someone and have nothing in writing. And it's like, no, no.
Yeah, partnerships are so funny. Similar to marriages, they start off with, really well and with really high expectations, and things can happen and partnerships fall apart. And one of the biggest issues I see is unmet expectations causing resentment. And so that's why having an agreement outlining who's doing what is really important.
I totally agree. I will have it linked in the show notes, but in case anybody just wants to hear how they can get a hold of these documents, where can they go?
Yeah, absolutely. So destinationlegal.com is the template shop. And if you're interested in trademarking, you can reach out to me at twistlaw.co. And also, I have a YouTube channel, Trademarks by Sarah, and I'm also on Instagram at Trademarks by Sarah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Sarah. Is there anything else that you feel like the retreat leaders should know to protect themselves legally, or do we feel like we've covered the big parts?
Yeah, I think we've ticked those boxes. And just if you don't have your retreat contract in place, I would not wait another day.
I agree wholeheartedly. Well, thank you so much, and I will have everything linked in the show notes.
Wonderful. Thanks, Shannon.
Thanks for listening to the Retreat Leaders Podcast. Learn more at www.theretreatranch.com. See you next time.